Shakera. I just want to find out a little bit more about your journey in the sport of cricket. If you could kindly share how you got involved in the game of cricket and how has that journey been for you?
I grew up in a neighborhood filled with boys. So if I wanted to play anything, I had to play whatever the boys were playing. So I played cricket when I was young, I played football, anything the boys were doing. But my uncle was very heavily involved in cricket. He played club cricket, and I remember always going to his games. And I just grew a love for cricket from a very young age. Ended up playing in primary school. I played secondary school under Roddy Eswick, actually. We played about 2 games. We had a girls' team, and we were only able to play about 2 games, but I was still able to train with him and never looked back from there.
You mentioned your uncle, you mentioned Roddy Eswick. Who would you say was your inspiration at that time when you just started this great game of cricket?
I'd have to say my uncle. He did encourage me. He always took me to his games. And yeah, like I said, that's where I really grew my love for the game. There was also a guy in my neighborhood who helped me a lot. He perhaps taught me how to bowl. So I owe a lot to him as well.
Now, beyond the formative years, you debuted for the West Indies in 2008. How was that experience achieving and accomplishing your childhood dream of playing for the West Indies?
Oh, I was very excited. I never actually thought there was a chance of me playing for West Indies. But then we had to form a Barbados team simply to allow Pamela Levine to be able to qualify to play for West Indies. I think that was sometime back in 2005 for that World Cup. And when I got the call in 2008, I remember how excited I was, and I was a huge fan of Dwayne Bravo. I wrote 47 on everything. I have 47 on all of my shirts. When I got my shirts, before I got the playing shirt, the playing jersey, I wrote 47 on all of my training clothes, and inside it, we had hoping that I would become 47. Unfortunately, I got number 4. I mean, I've grown to love the number 4 now, and perhaps that's why I like Shea Hope so much. But yeah, I remember how excited I was back then. I was only 16.
Well, Dwayne will be happy, even Shea Hope will be happy that you took some element of their numbers into your own game. In terms of great memories on the field of play, you had 5 for 15 against New Zealand. Care to share your top 3 memories, whether it's performances or experiences on the field of play?
Personally, that was perhaps my greatest achievement. Obviously, New Zealand, one of the top ranked teams. And in that 5-wicket haul, I got some of their top batters. I remember I was only getting about 2 wickets a game, and someone spoke to me and said people don't remember 2 wickets. And I remember going into the game quite upset because I thought I had defended a total, I think I defended about 7 in an over to help the team win the game, the previous game. And it still seemed as though that wasn't enough. And I went into that game pretty upset, but it worked for me. And I was really happy to get 5 wickets against a top team. I also got 4 wickets on that first tour, 4 wickets in the game against Ireland. It was just Holland, but I was really excited because it was my first tour for West Indies. And that's another really good achievement. And of course, that 2016 World Cup, which we won. That was perhaps the highlight of my career, even though I was injured and I wasn't able to play. Just being a part of that squad and seeing how much the girls really give in that World Cup, it meant so much for us to finally win a World Championship.
You mentioned that World Cup, which is probably the highest point that the women's game has achieved so far. Care to tell me a little bit about how you view the women's game in your journey? And we'll talk about beyond later on.
We have grown. I remember when we first started, it wasn't the slight bit professional. Many of the girls didn't know about proper training. Many of the girls weren't exposed to coaches. They didn't have access to coaches or proper facilities. Since then, I can safely say that, at least in Barbados for sure, we have access to Kensington Oval and we can work with the coaches there. I'm sure the same thing happens around the other Caribbean countries. So it has grown, and we've had a lot more camps since that 2016 World Cup. But I still think the rest of the world has kind of gone ahead from us, especially since that 2016 World Cup. We would have known that lots of people would have expected so much more from us. And since that, we've only been able to make the semi-final in 2018 here in the Caribbean, but we haven't been consistent. So a lot still has to be done, but I suppose it has a lot to do with the resources that Cricket West Indies has.
Right, you've spoken and touched on some of the things that are required for West Indies women's cricket to sustain the dizzy heights that we saw in 2016. If you were in charge, what would you do looking beyond March 2021 for the game in the Caribbean?
Well, I was fortunate to actually coach when I was in Barbados, and I was a part of our national sports council there. And before I finished, I actually suggested that perhaps they could start a softball women's tournament. I think that's the way to get girls comfortable playing the sport. I've seen how it's worked in Trinidad again. I'm sorry I have to use Trinidad all the time.
And you're advocating that regionally?
Regionally, yes, yes. It has worked for Trinidad, but obviously we need to see the development in other countries. So I'm thinking perhaps we can try that and find a way to get it in schools. I know some teams have advocated for at least one female player on the male teams, but perhaps we have to go beyond that. It's the only way we're going to get better.
Let's shift a little bit of focus back to you personally. You started in the commentary box in that CG Insurance Super 50 competition 2021, and it has rolled over into the international series with the West Indies and Sri Lanka. How has that experience been for you?
Oh, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I obviously completed a course where you were one of my instructors along with Alan Wilkins, and that helped me a lot. I've always been one to be looking at my career after cricket. I've been plagued by injury a lot, so I have no idea when my career is going to suddenly end. So in planning for that, I was always open to any opportunity to perhaps continue to be involved in women's cricket. Like I said, I've coached before, but the commentary stint, it was really enjoyable, especially working alongside you, Samuel, and Ian Bishop. I've looked up to him for a very long time. And I was actually very nervous when I saw him in the gym a day. I remember walking up to the gym and seeing someone on the cycle, and I was really hoping it was Roddy. When I got in and saw it was Bish. I was like, oh my gosh. I felt like a groupie. But yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, and just on that same, experience that you've had in commentary, is the game different from sitting in a commentary box as against being out there on the field?
For one, it allows me to be more analytical, but it also helps me to understand the commentator's point of view. I know quite often as players, when we hear what commentators are saying, we always think they're being so critical of what we're doing and not really understanding that they're perhaps lending suggestions. So it has given me a different point of view, and I think perhaps it could help my game.
So Shakera, just closing thoughts. You've just seen the men's team win in the T20 International Series and in the 50 overs series against Sri Lanka. How would you describe what you've seen from the men's team?
Firstly, I'm just really happy that the West Indies was able to win a series. They won, obviously had to fight in that T20 series, but I thought they did well to hold their nerve. I also look forward to that test series. It will be interesting with the change of captaincy. But I think in recent years, we've been building a really good test team, so I really hope that they can go on and do well against the Sri Lankans.